Welcome to the question of the day. Today we have a question from Curtis in Florida. And today's question is, would you hire somebody into a sales position who is young? They go on to say that they are a technician, but they worry about the age. I guess I have a quick answer and a long-winded answer here. The quick answer is no, I wouldn't worry about the age, right? And legally, you can't factor that into your hiring decisions anyways. But I wouldn't worry about it even if it was legal. What I do worry about are other components. Now, there may be some challenges with being young, like customers believing you, right? When you look like my teenage son or teenage daughter coming in and trying to educate me on a major purchase, that may create some roadblocks. But I always tell young people that are in sales that it just puts more pressure on you to know your stuff, to really be able to come in and explain value to a customer, right? People can recognize when you know your stuff. I'm sure there's one curmudgeon out there in 100 that, would solely base their decision off of your age. And you know what? I don't want that customer anyways. But when you know your stuff and you can deliver an experience to a customer, they're not going to care about your age. So you'll be able to overcome that easy. But so I'm not concerned about age in hiring. I would hire a young person. In fact, I think there would be some some great qualities in a young person, but regardless of age, these are the things that I would be looking for when hiring a salesperson. And there's really five categories that I would be looking for. And I'll go a little deeper into each one here, but the five categories are their communication and people skills, their sales process mastery, their value explanation, their business and mindset, and then their presence. So let's start with communication and people skills. So communication and people skills. This would be things like active listening. Do they listen to what the customer says? Do they listen to what people say? Do they formulate a response based on what the other person said? Do they ask great questions, open-ended questions based on what the other person said? There's this myth that salespeople talk a whole lot. But in my experience, I found that to not be true. The best salespeople I found don't talk very much at all. What they do really well is they ask really good questions and they listen to those responses. So that also leads into controlling the conversation. When you're asking good questions, you have more control over the direction of where that conversation is going to go and thus your sales process. So I always ask, who's in control of the conversation? Is it the person asking the questions or is it the person answering the questions? It's the person asking the questions. So you want to be able to ask good open-ended questions. You also want to be able to display empathy. So not to be confused with sympathy. I don't want to feel sorry for my customers, but what I do want to do is I want to be there with my customers. I want to understand what they're feeling, what they're going through. Because honestly, the thing they're buying is like surface level, right? But the experience they're going through, that's where they're at right now. That's where their mind is. And so if you can be empathetic, if you can get into that hole with them and sit with them and understand where they're at, you don't have to have experienced it yourself, but just be where they're at. I understand why you're thinking that way. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. So having that empathy. And then being able to put these solutions into a clear message for your customers, providing clarity. A lot of this stuff gets complex and I always say too techie, no checky, right? And that's why technicians have a tough time selling is because they've got almost too much knowledge. And so we have to be able to put things into simple terms. There's a chart that I draw out when I go visit a company, and it's called the know/care chart. 95% of people don't know what you're talking about or don't care what you're talking about. It's like when I talk to IT and I've got an issue with my computer. Like actually, like right now, my computer is like 5 minutes ahead of the real time. And I'll call in and say, hey, I need to set my clock, and they'll ask me questions, all kinds of questions that I don't know what the heck that even means. Like, did you clear your cache? I don't know what the heck that is. I don't even know how to spell that, right? Like, and so I just want my clock set. That's what I want. So we have to be able to provide clarity, right? And that clarity provides confidence. So when we are clear in our solutions and we've asked good questions and we've been empathetic, that provides confidence without being an arrogant salesperson. So those are communication and people skills that I would be looking for. The second qualities I would be looking for would be sales process mastery. So they are able to master a process. They're able to see how the process goes together, that one step leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next, right? And if I execute each of these steps, eventually I'll get to the end. A lot of times salespeople think that they're at the very, very beginning and they're trying to jump all the way to the end. You don't have to jump all the way to the end. All you have to do is get to the next sales step. And if you keep nudging it forward, eventually you'll get to the end. That's what'll happen. And in fact, a lot of times I'll get questions about, like, what do you do when this happens? That's not part of the process. You're right. We get pulled out of the process. So that ability to know that process so well that when I get pulled out of the process, I can get back into the process. So examples of this would be like, you show up and you want to set an agenda with your customer, but they're running around the side of the house. Well, do we not set an agenda at that point? No, we follow them to the back. And then we talk to them for a little bit. We empathize with them because they're obviously concerned about the situation. And then we set the agenda. Objections is another example, right? Like, objections aren't customer doesn't want to buy. Like, no logical person would have had you out to their home and took time off of work, right, to spend time with this stranger if they weren't serious about buying. Questions aren't that they don't want to buy. Questions are, or objections are just questions. So we just have to answer those questions or solve those problems for the customer. It's just pulling us out of our process. So mastery of a sales process, that open-mindedness to understand that I need to execute a process. A good sales process should be like a water slide. You should start in the exact same place every single time. You should be able to navigate the corners without resistance, and you end up in the exact same place every time. That should be the mindset towards sales. And so sales process mastery, that would be the second set of skills I would be looking for. The next set would be value explanation. So a lot of these things that we're selling, they're complicated, right? And I already said, like, you have to simplify it for a customer. You have to have clarity in what those solutions are, but you also need to frame it in a with them, right? What's in it for me, right? Like, why should the customer care? Often I talk about feature, function, benefit. That should be how we explain everything that's going to be on our options. This is the feature, what it is. This is the function, what it does. This is the benefit, how it benefits you. If you follow that phrasing and how you go over your options, customers will create a picture in their head. And that picture will create emotions, buying emotions, emotions of, I want that thing because I can see myself using that thing and how it would make my life better. So we need to be able to frame things into a value explanation for the customer. Because if we can sell value, price will no longer be an issue. And I do know a lot of companies and salespeople that talk to me that say price is an issue. So focus on that value and price will no longer be an issue. So the fourth category that I'm looking for, or skills that I'm looking for, would be business and mindset skills. And so this would be like time management. How do they manage their time? Are they a self-starter? Do they need somebody to tell them everything they need to do, or can they manage their own time? I remember one time early in my career, I was a training manager, and I went to the training director and I said, I need an assistant. I can't get all this stuff done. And he did a time management exercise with me. And long story short, at the end, he showed me that I didn't need an assistant. I needed to be more effective with my time, is really what it came down to. Fun flash forward on that. Years later, when I did really need an assistant, when I did need a number two, I used the exact same exercise to show, look, I got more things we're trying to accomplish here. I either need to take some off my plate or I need another body, right? And so that was what put it into tangible terms. So time management, they have to be able to manage their time. They have to have a goal setting mindset. Like, what's next? I was asked one time, Chris, do you know how to identify successful people? And I said, I don't know. Money? The guy said, no, not money. It's that it's never good enough, right there. No matter what successes you find, you're always asking the question, what's next? What's next? What's next? If you have that kind of mindset, that goal setting mindset of I'm here now and I want to get there and then I got to fill in the gaps. These are the actions I need to do to get there. That person will be successful in sales. And so I need someone that has that goal setting mindset. They need to have resilience as well. One of my mentors, Eric Bowles, he said, you don't want good people on your team. You want resilient people on your team, because resilient people, they're going to be the ones that are standing with you after you've gone through the crap. We saw that in COVID, right? When COVID happened, nobody knew it was happening. Nobody wrote a playbook for this, right? And so the resilient people, those are the ones that emerged as leaders. Those are the ones that it was their opportunity to shine because they're problem solvers. They figured out a way to solve the problems that nobody else had a solution for. And then we were more successful because of it. So we need resilient people, right? That needs to be a mindset. They need to be able to control their emotions. Sometimes sales can be frustrating, right? Sometimes we can bring in our personal life and it affects our work life and our interactions with our customers. We need to be able to control that. We need to be able to leave it at the door. You should never be able to tell what's going on in my personal life based on how I'm interacting with my customers, with my sales process. And they got to have that mindset of continuous learning. There's always something that I can learn. When I got to a point in my career where I was doing sales training for many years, sales coaching for many years, I had done the objection boot camp for many years, and I had an opportunity to attend a sales training. And a lot of the stuff, 90% of the stuff, I trained myself and I believed in, and it was great. But there was still 5 or 10% that I hadn't thought about it that way. I hadn't done it that way. And there was one in particular, I remember leaving the training where I thought hard about it. I was like, I don't do it that way. And I don't think that's the right way. But as I got out with companies and I rode along with companies and I saw it in the field and I saw it working, my viewpoint started to shift. That, golly, maybe that works. Maybe that is the way to do it, right? So having that open mindset to continuous learning, continuous practice to get better. So the final skills that you would need would be your presence. And honestly, these are the things I can't really teach. You got it or you don't. This would be things like how you show up to a customer. I'm talking about your professional appearance, right? Are your clothes clean? Are your clothes not wrinkled, right? Do you look like somebody that I should make a major financial decision with, right? I always think of it like the commercial. Do you look like the commercial? So, like McDonald's, for example, not to trash on McDonald's, but there's a commercial I see all the time of what the person who works at McDonald's looks like and what my burger looks like. But when I go into my local McDonald's, it is a very different person serving me a very different looking hamburger when I go into McDonald's. And so with us, do we look like the commercial? If there was a commercial for your company of a salesperson coming into the home and helping the customer solve their problems, what would that person look like? Do you look like that person? So do you look professional? And along these lines, I get a lot of questions around like, tattoos, nose rings, beards, stuff like that. And I guess my stance on it is, does it look professional? My job is not to alienate anybody, because if I come in there and I got a bunch of biker tattoos, and I got nothing against tattoos, I have tattoos myself. But if I have a bunch of biker tattoos and I run into somebody who doesn't like tattoos, I just alienated that person. And so my job is to be as neutral as possible, but stand out by delivering an exceptional experience. That way I won't alienate anybody, but I'll build on that value and capture more sales. So so that presence. But then also beyond just looks, it's just how do they make people feel when they come into a room? When they come into a room, are people walking on eggshells? Do people feel awkward or does it feel warm and welcoming? Does the mood of the room change when they walk into the room? This tells you how they're going to treat customers, but it also tells you how they're going to work with other departments, how they're going to work with your installers, they're going to work with the service technicians, other managers, etc. There is a guy that I coach in Oklahoma right now, and he has the warmest presence ever. And I watched this company evolve over time. They went from like walking on eggshells around salespeople to now there's interaction between the departments. He goes and rides with install. They appreciate when he comes along. They teach him things to help him get better so that he can sell better and set it up for install better, right? Like he's so friendly. He was at a customer's house and noticed the neighbor next door had a noisy AC. And when the neighbor came out, he just started chatting with the neighbor. He sold two ACs to the neighbors just by being friendly because he elevates the room when he walks into it. So presence. So these are the 5 categories that you got to be looking for to have a good salesperson: communication and people skills, sales process mastery, that value explanation, that business and mindset, and then presence. But I want to, in closing here, I want to dispel 2 myths with hiring people as well. The first myth is that you need to be a technician to be a salesperson. Like you can't be a salesperson in the trades without having been a technician. And I would say absolutely not. Could you find a technician that is also a very good salesperson? Yes, you could find that. That is possible. I would say they almost have a hurdle that other salespeople don't have in that they know too much, that they have to simplify it for customers because, like I said earlier, if it's too techy, no checky. And so there's almost an added hurdle. But also, we got to recognize it's 2 very different skill sets. Being a technician and being a salesperson are 2 very different skill sets. I got into sales because I'm not good at fixing things. Okay. Like I don't have that skill set. I can't do that. And every time I try, my wife reminds me I should have just called somebody. So it's 2 very different skill sets. So you don't need to be a technician to be a salesperson. In fact, I think if you're only looking for technicians, you are severely limiting your pool of good salespeople. And so what you do need to find though is you do need to find somebody that is open to learning how these systems work and has the ability to learn how these systems work, at least at a level that they can be dangerous, that they can talk intelligently about how it works. They don't have to have all the answers to all the questions. If they did, they'd be a technician. But they at least have to have that ability to learn. That's very easy to teach. That's easier to teach than skill sets like being conversational and showing up with presence and stuff like that. So I'd rather teach somebody like how a system works if they're open to learning about it. But that's something that we can find. And that opens up our hiring pool. You can find a lot more salespeople by looking outside of just technicians. The second myth that I want to dispel is that you have to have sales experience, that I would only hire a salesperson that has previous sales experience. And I would say that's a big no on this one. In fact, I almost think that's like a red flag. One that I look to is in Jonathan Wisman's book, The Sales Boss. Sales Boss. He says this exact same thing, that good salespeople are not looking for another job, right? So if you have somebody actively applying for your sales job and they have sales experience, they're probably not a good salesperson. And because if they were, they would be selling where they're at, and their company wouldn't let them go if they were good. If you're a good salesperson, your company is going to hang on to you with both hands. They're going to make you comfortable so that you stick around because they don't want to lose you. They know how hard it is to find a salesperson. So no, I don't like salespeople that are applying to the jobs. In fact, that raises just a lot of questions in my mind. To find good salespeople, though, that's the key is you have to go find them. They're not going to come to you. So you have to look in other industries. So these skill sets that you're looking for, go look in other industries. Find people that have these skills and then bring them into your industry. There is a lot of great people out there that are in other industries that have these skill sets that would love to come over to the trades if they just knew something about it, right? They would love to come to a company if they knew how great that company was. Um, the other place that you might look is companies that are in transition. It is possible to get a good salesperson when a company is going through a transition, like new ownership, sold to private equity, something like that. It just doesn't feel like the same place anymore. A good salesperson may be willing to jump ship then at that opportunity. So you could look for that. That might be an instance where you find somebody with sales experience. Another spot that I think people don't look hard enough, especially in the trades, is trying to find female salespeople, women that would be great salespeople in the trades. We've kind of made it a boys' club over the years, and it's just an environment where not a lot of women think to go and sell. But I mean, think about this logically. Like if you had the 100 best salespeople, 50 would probably be men, 50 would be women. But that's not what the trades looks like right now. If you take a sampling, it's probably 99 men to every one woman. But I know a lot of great women that are in the trades. They discovered the trades and they are phenomenal salespeople. There is a salesperson I work with in Michigan right now, and she sold candles prior to this. She had her own candle business and she discovered the trades and she was like, this is awesome. Like she even had a call with me. Our first call was just to confirm, like, am I understanding this right? Like I can make this much money for selling. And like that type of eagerness to come in and master a new industry, she's just exploded over the last year. And so she's just one example of, I think, many where we could look for these skill sets in other industries. Specifically, there's a lot of good women out there, women salespeople that could come over to our industry. So those are the two myths. You don't need to be a tradesperson and know everything about what you're selling. You just have to have the ability to learn. And you don't have to have previous sales experience. Like you can learn that stuff. So that's the question of the day today. No, I would not worry about hiring somebody young, but I would look for those skills right there. So if you have a question, reach out to me either on email or social media. We'll get it answered on the show. I'll have that information down in the show notes below. If you're a Nexstar member, schedule a call with me and we can address this just one-on-one specific to your situation here. I'm Coach Chris. See you tomorrow.